In this video, we're going to walk through the steps of how to create a Turnitin assignment. As you can see, I am inside my course homepage. The only thing you need to do to create your first assignment is to click the Add Assignment button. We will then be presented with the options to create an assignment title. I will just call mine Global Warming. Choose a point value. You can choose your start date, your due date, and your post date. Please keep in mind the post date is the day your students will be able to see your comments and quick marks that you've added to Feedback Studio. If your students tell you, I can open up my similarity report, but I do not see any of your comments, most likely it is because this post date has not passed. You can make this post date any date as long as it is after the start date. Our next option here is to allow only file types that Turnitin can check for similarity. These are file types that contain text. If the file does not contain text, we cannot check for similarity. If you were to allow any file type, for example, a student could submit an image file. You would still be able to see the image inside Feedback Studio, and you could still add comments and quick marks if you wanted, but there would be no similarity report because image files do not contain text. It is typically easier to choose the Allow Only File Types. That way it cuts down on confusion from students submitting the wrong files. Then our next button here is our optional settings. You have the ability to enter in special instructions. You also have the ability to allow submissions after the due date. This is allowing a student to submit late. Please keep in mind, however, a student can only submit late if they have not submitted at all. If a student is trying to resubmit, it will not let them. Our next option, generate similarity reports for submissions. Typically, we'll always choose yes, because then it will create a similarity report that students can access. Your next option is when do you want to generate those similarity reports for students? Immediately, first report is final, so a student would submit their paper, they would immediately receive a similarity report, and they would not be allowed to resubmit. Your second option here is immediately can overwrite reports until due date. So a student would submit their paper, they would immediately receive a similarity report, but they would be allowed to resubmit until the due date. Keep in mind, resubmissions will overwrite any previous submissions. So if you're looking to be able to see how they progressed from maybe their first submission to their third, you will not be able to when it comes to resubmissions because that resubmission will overwrite. Please also keep in mind when it comes to resubmissions that after they've resubmitted three times, on their fourth resubmission, they will not receive their similarity reports for 24 hours. Our third option here is on the due date. So a student would submit their paper, but they would not receive that similarity report until the due date has passed. I'm going to go ahead and choose the second option. Our next three options are exclusions. Would you like to exclude bibliographic material, exclude quoted material, or exclude small sources? As you can imagine, if you're assigning a creative writing assignment compared to a research paper is most likely going to have a much higher similarity score. Because of this, you or your students might want to be able to see what their score would be when you take out bibliographic materials or take out quoted materials. So if I chose to exclude bibliographic materials, it will not check any of the content that falls after the words bibliography, works cited, or references. That content that follows after those items will not be counted in the similarity score. Likewise, if you choose yes for excluded quoted materials, it will not check for similarity for anything that falls within quotes. Exclude small sources. You may find from time to time that you may be getting similarity scores of 2-3% matches. This may be 2 or 3, 4, 5 word matches. These may not seem significant to you. So if you would like to exclude those small sources so that they don't appear on your list, you can choose yes, and then you have the ability to exclude by word count or percentage. So if I did not want to see any small matches of 5 words or less, I could choose that and add 5 in my box here. Or I could choose to exclude by percentage. Now keep in mind, when you exclude by percentage, it's based on word count. So if it was a 1,000-word paper, and you chose to exclude 1%, that would be a 10-word match. You may find that to be significant. I usually say stick with word count unless you know that there's a certain percentage you would like to exclude. Now keep in mind with these 3 exclusions, this is on the assignment level, so it will affect every student. Please take a look at the Feedback Studio video to see how you can do these exclusions on a paper-by-paper basis. When you are inside Feedback Studio, you do have the ability to filter out this material and run a new report if you want to. That way you can do it on a paper-by-paper basis rather than on the assignment level. I'm going to go ahead and choose no for these 3. Your next option is, do you want to allow students to see the similarity report? Yes or no. The next option is submit papers to no standard paper repository or no repository. If you choose standard paper repository, when your students submit their papers, that will be added to our paper repository. Currently, we have over 1 billion student papers in our repository. When those papers are added to our repository, all future submissions from around the world will be checked against that repository. So if it is a final draft, you are most likely going to want to choose standard paper repository so that any future submissions by future students in future semesters would check against those student submissions. If this is a draft assignment, you are going to want to choose no repository. Because if you allow your students' first drafts to be submitted to our paper repository, when they submit their final drafts, it will check against those first drafts, and those similarity scores are going to be quite high. So keep in mind, if it is a draft assignment, you're probably going to want to choose no repository. Your next options here are just what exactly we check against when a student submits their paper. Our student paper repository with over 1 billion student papers. We have a current and archived internet of about 70 billion web pages going back 8 years. And we also partner with the major publishers, periodicals, journals, and other publications and have back-end access to their material that we check against as well. You do not have to choose all 3, but you have to choose at least one for us to run a similarity report. Next, you have the ability to attach a rubric to your assignment. If you attach a rubric, you will be able to grade from that rubric inside Feedback Studio. As you begin to add rubrics, they will appear for you in this drop-down list. For instance, these are rubrics that I've uploaded myself through the Rubric Manager. You will most likely also have default rubrics available to you that you can use if you wish. If you do not want to use a rubric, you can simply click No Rubric, and you will not have that inside Feedback Studio. To take a closer look at the Rubric Manager, please watch the Rubric Manager video available to you as well. This link here will actually link you to our rubric library. We have over 50 rubrics that we've created from our content professionals that you can download and use and upload into your Rubric Manager. I'm going to go ahead and just choose a rubric to attach to my paper. Next, we have our ETS E-Rater settings. The E-Rater technology is a third-party kind of artificial intelligence that is automatically going to check your students' papers for spelling, grammar, usage, mechanics, and style. It doesn't have to check for all of these. If you wish that it didn't check for spelling, you can uncheck that. But these checks for the ETS E-Rater will appear as purple comments inside Feedback Studio. When a student clicks on those purple comments, it will tell them, give them an explanation of why that purple comment exists. For example, maybe they were missing quotations. But it also gives them a link to an online handbook. So here you can choose what level handbook you want your students to have access to. Now, if you do not want to use the ETS E-Rater, you can simply click on No, and that will not appear inside Feedback Studio for you or your students. If you choose Yes, all you need to do is choose your level handbook and what categories you want it to check for, and it will do this automatically for you. Lastly, we have the option to change or to choose to have these options saved for us as our default options in the future. So if you know you're going to have more assignments in the future, they're going to have the same options, then you'll probably want to save these as your defaults, as it will make it much easier and quicker for you to create an assignment. Once you've chosen all of your options, you can click the Submit button. And you can see that now we have our assignment we created with our start date, due date, and post date. Currently, I have 0 students in my class, but as your students start to populate your course, this number will obviously go up, and it will let you know how many students have submitted out of how many students you have in your course. You do have a More Actions button here, where you can edit those assignment options we just saw. You can actually submit on behalf of a student if you need to. If that student is having trouble or difficulty accessing the system, and you need to step in and help, you can submit for them, or you can delete an assignment. After you have created your first assignment, when you click the Add Assignment button, you'll notice that instead of it taking us right to choosing a name for our assignment and choosing points and start date, due date, and feedback release date, we now have other options available to us. These 3 options here. The reason for this is that these 3 options for assignments are all based on having a previous assignment created. That's why the first time you create an assignment, we automatically have you create a paper assignment. And once you've created at least one assignment, you will then have these other options. This first option here, a peer mark assignment, is a peer review assignment. You can view a peer mark demo here, but this allows you to create an assignment, a peer review assignment, where students would review other students' papers and answer various questions that you've attached to the assignment. You also have the option to create a revision assignment based on that paper assignment that you created previously. This allows you to create an assignment that offers multiple parts. So for instance, maybe you want to create an assignment that offers a first draft, second draft, final draft, all in one assignment. The nice thing about the revision assignment is it doesn't overwrite any of the previous submissions. It keeps them separate so that you can see how students have done from that first draft to second draft to final draft. And you can do that by choosing revision assignment and creating multiple parts inside that assignment. Last assignment type available is the reflection assignment. And this is where students can give you feedback on the assignment that they just worked on and what they learned inside that assignment. These are the options available to you after you've created your first paper assignment.